Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on a Wednesday. I hope you're having a good week. Um, Welcome all to Women Who Code, and we'll just be starting in another minute or so as soon as everyone is on. And if you're joining in, let us know where you're joining in from, and you can actually use the chat function on your Zoom. Below, it has an option for putting up your place you're joining in from. And while you tell us where you're joining in from, do make sure to include all panelists plus attendees in the option. As soon as you do that, everyone will come to know where you're joining in from. So do feel free to join in and let us know where you're joining in from. So we have Myra joining in from Savannah. Hi, Myra. We have also Kyra joining in from Philadelphia. We have Kanchan joining in from India. Hi, Kanchan. We also have Sarah joining in from Baltimore. Hi. We have Nikita joining in from Pune. There's so many people. Hello, everyone. And we're just going to wait one more minute. We have so many people joining in. We also have Shweta, who's joining in from Florida. Hi, Shweta. Welcome to Women Who Code Python. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you're joining us again, welcome too. And thank you for staying on and coming back to our events. So, Mridu, are you excited? Pumped up?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the first time that I am speaking at Women Who Code event. So I'm anyways very excited.
Welcome to our family. And we just love to have you here. And I think we are good to get started on. I'm just going to ask you like another question here is like, how do you feel? I know this time we're going to do things a little differently and like we're going to find out how to, broadcast via phone. So all of you who are joining us today would love to know the fact that Mridu is actually joining in from a phone today. So we have things a little different. I think we are actually sort of, blending in and evolving according to how, digital events correspond. So that's quite exciting. And I will be actually using and, moving through her slides. So it'll be exciting. It'll be something different. Are you looking forward to that, Mridu?
Yeah, I hope everything works out.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me jump right in because we are 3 minutes into the webinar. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the REST API integration with Python. And yeah, I am Vaibhishwaran Archana. I am the leadership fellow for the Cloud and Python tracks. I co-lead this with Bree for the year 2020, and I'm part of the Women Who Code organization. And we also have Mridu joining in for us from India. So Mridu is a software engineer. She enjoys, converting her ideas into working application. She also loves speaking at a lot of, tech conference. I know you yesterday spoke at PyLadies Berlin. And so it's wonderful to have you amongst us. And just before we begin, I'm just going to go over our mission statement. So our mission statement at Women Who Code is to inspire women to excel in technology careers. Our vision is to actually have a world where women are equal representatives at all levels. That means as technical executives, as founders, as VCs, as board members, and also above all as, software engineers. And our target audience is not completely, early entry or, people. We actually target women who have like around 2 or more years of experience and are looking for support. And we provide them support through webinar, resources, etc. And we have a very strict code of conduct. So Women Who Code is an inclusive community, and we do not, have like bias for gender identity or anything else. And if you find that, someone is violating this code of conduct, just feel free to leave an incident report form in the link here. So let us jump right in, Mridu. Are you excited? So
yeah.
Just one moment. Over to you, Mridu.
Yeah, thank you, Archana. So hello everyone, I'm Ridu Bhatnagar. I'm joining in from India, and I have 2 to 3 years of experience working with Python professionally. So I have worked before as a data engineer, backend developer, and I enjoy solving everyday problems using Python. And apart from coding, I absolutely enjoy giving talks at various meetups and conferences. So that is what that are basically the things I primarily do. And at the moment, I'm involved with these communities and everything. And along with that, I'm in the job market as well, looking for my next remote opportunity. So all those things I'm doing parallelly. So now we'll be starting with the session. So the topic is REST API integrations with Python. Can you please change the slide? Yeah. So as we all know, API stands for Application Programming Interface. But theoretically, what is meant by API? What is this interface? So it is set of programming code that enables transmission between one software program and another. So as you can see in this diagram, we have, when you see the left-hand corner, you can see a system present over there. That is basically the client machine, web app in your browser. This is your system. Now from your system, you send request over to the web server. And web server is the place where your API is lying. APIs are present on the web server. That program that has your API, it keeps on continuously running, and the machine which sends the request, that is known as your client machine. The machine that sends the response is named as your web server, and all of these are connected with the internet. Like, it is because of the internet that we are able to request something and get a response back from the machine. So communication is happening on the internet, and the web server is getting the data from the database. So while I'll explain you, I'm kind of explaining this diagram that you can see in the slide. My client is sending the request to the server. Server consists of the API, and then server is sending back the response to the client. This is basically in the nutshell what happens when you operate, like when you visit the websites or when you enter any URL on the browser. In the background, all these things are happening. And database, as we all know, is used for storing the data. Any kind of data that has to be returned to the user is basically saved in the database. So this pictorially represents what exactly is the purpose of having an API. So API acts just as an interface. Next slide, please. So where do we use APIs in everyday life? You know, in computer science, that there are a lot of theoretical concepts, and for a lot of theoretical concepts, we don't get to know that practically where they are used. But API, REST APIs, all of these things, like this is a concept that is widely being used in the industry, and there are a lot of everyday examples that you see. So one thing is, like, as we all are undergoing, we all are currently going through the tough times, and you might have seen when initially this COVID thing started, within a month or two, probably every developer out here must have tried building up the COVID-19 dashboard, and then we were showing the data visualizations. I mean, I remember somewhere in March when it all started and we were in lockdown, there were a lot of people building up this application, and they had hosted it up on a platform like Heroku, where everyone can go and just check it out. So did you know that from where this data was being collected? What they were visualizing, there needs to be something from where the data is coming. So that data was coming through an API. John Hopkins University had released a API. They had made an API public that had all of this data, and using that data, that visualization was created. So before creating the visualization, we need to have some data. So this is one example of the COVID-19 dashboard. Another example is that of a login page. So login page, we'll just see the example that how does this happen. So can you open HackerEarth login? Can you just click on login? Yeah. So this is our site. So HackerEarth, if you don't know, is a a startup based out of India, where they have a lot of programming challenges and problems that you can just come and solve. A lot of competitive programming practice can be done on this platform. So this is their login page. And what I'm trying to show you is, you can see there are 3 icons on the login page. One is login with Facebook, another is login with GitHub, and then you can see login with Google. And then one is you can directly put your email address as well as password and then login. So what we need to focus is this part: login with Facebook, login with GitHub, and login with Google. What they are doing is, the platform is HackerEarth, but they are using the functionality of Facebook, GitHub, and Google. So they are asking us that you can even sign in using all of your these three accounts. So Facebook, GitHub, Google, all these programs and products are different. Those have nothing to do with HackerEarth. They have just integrated it so that you can log in. This is for our convenience. Another utility of having APIs is that, when you have API, you don't have to code things from scratch. They are just using the functionality what Facebook had already built, which saves their time. If they start building everything from scratch and then tell you that, okay, now you log in using your Facebook IDs, then that would consume a lot of time. So what needs to be remembered is, APIs also help us in adding the functionality while we are saving upon time as well. We have just added the functionality that is built by someone else. So there are 3 APIs that are being used: Facebook, then you have GitHub API, and then there is Gmail as well. So this is another example of APIs being used in everyday life. Can you go back to the presentation, Archana? Yeah. So next example is live tweets, recent tweets showcased on the company website. So this is another thing that can be seen. You might have observed there are a lot of company websites or blogging websites that show the tweets. We can just give a live example of this as well. Can you just open PyCon India website? I hope things are...
Yeah, sure. I will try and open that.
Yeah. Can you just scroll down? I'm not very sure if they have it, but let us check. No, we can't see it.
Yeah, I think they had one for Twitter, but yeah, I think they...
Yeah, I also... Can you click on blog and check if there is anything there, if they are doing? No, I don't think so. It is there now. So a basic idea was this whole tweets thing can be embedded on your own website. So you don't have to code everything and, scrape the Twitter and then fetch your tweets. All your recent tweets can be put on a completely different website or your own website, and all the tweets can be shown. All this is possible because of the APIs. That it saves time. You don't have to scrape the complete website. You can just use API and then embed the tweets. And also in using API, there is nothing as illegal. I mean, that is something that these days, every product-based company or each of these social media platforms is providing. And the use cases, there are n number of use cases where these APIs can be used. Yeah, next slide. Can you go on the presentation again, please? Another example is developer accounts on social media. So whenever we open social media, you go on Facebook, you go on Twitter, we just check our feeds, and just there is a lot of time waste as well. We keep on scrolling. Apart from that, have you ever observed that Twitter provides you two options? There are two options that Twitter and Facebook provides you, and two options include, there are developer APIs as well. One is you log in from like normal account login is there. Another is you create a developer account. Have you ever checked that what is this developer account? Why are they providing us with two different account logins? What is the need that why the developer needs another special access to the account? So these developer accounts are provided so that you can make use of their APIs, develop your own product, add the functionality in your own code base, and build interesting projects out of it. So that is the reason where APIs are used, and also not all APIs are free. So there can be APIs which are paid and company might be earning through that API. So there are n number of API example. For this also, we'll just be seeing an example. Can you show the Twitter site, Archana? Yeah. So this we have opened. You can see the URL is developer.twitter.com. It is not twitter.com. We are opening developer.twitter.com, and you can see the API documentation. On your left hand side, the scrolling thing that you can see, it is telling you what all features the API provides. So it allows you to post, retrieve, and engage with the tweets. You can fetch all the tweets from your timeline. You can curate a collection of tweets. You can just collect all the tweets, and you can have those cards filtered as well, the tweet cards. Then it gives you the tweet objects. So there are numerous possibilities that can be done, and Twitter provides with two APIs. One API is their search API. So what search API does is, you can pull the historical data using the search API. Another API is the Twitter streaming API. So that Twitter streaming API is basically the API that gives you the real-time tweets. Both of these are different. So this is another use case, and similarly Facebook has its own API, GitHub has its own API. So all these APIs exist. So this was just another example of how social media platforms and platforms like GitHub, which is used for collaboration, provides us with the API. Yeah. Can you move on to the slides? Yeah. Another example is when you might have opened a product website, and on the right hand side, usually you might have observed that there is the chatbot. And when you click on that chatbot option, a chat box opens, and where you can just ask questions to the bot and the bot replies. So this is another place where you will see APIs, and we'll just show you two different examples. One where the chatbot is developed by the company itself, and another where they are using the APIs. So first we'll be showing you the case where API is being used. Yeah. Can you move on to that? Yeah, this one. So as you all can see, just see this help box on the right hand side of the screen. The right box help window that you see, it is asking us how can we help. So this is a chat box, and you would observe that we are on a different website. Our website name is hookcoffee.com.sg. While the chat box, below the chat box, you can see there is name written Zendex. Zendex is a different company. Hook Coffee is a different company. And what you need to realize as developers is that this is the integration that is being done. So there might be an API, or there is a different company that is providing this support for the chat box. So this is another example where APIs are being used. So API is one concept irrespective of your background, no matter if you have to do data science, no matter if you have to do backend development or front-end development, everywhere APIs are being used. And even if you are someone who is into testing, you might have often come across cases where you are asked to test the APIs built by the developers. So APIs are all around, lot of things are running upon APIs. So this is an important concept to know basically. Can we go back to the slides, Archana? Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so now once we have discussed everyday use cases of the APIs, let us see what are the types of APIs. So based on accessibility, there can be two APIs. One can be your public APIs, another kind can be the private APIs. Public APIs are those APIs that are freely, not freely available, but are the APIs that you can access. Public APIs can be paid APIs and public APIs can be non-paid APIs as well. So based on the documentation, based on pricing of the API, you will come to know whether the API is free to use or is chargeable API. But they are public and private APIs as well. So example of public API is the APIs provided by these social media platforms. Facebook API, Twitter API, GitHub API, all these APIs that we talked about, Slack API, Telegram API, all these are public APIs. They have made it available to their clients or the customers so that they can use, so that you can build your own projects. Example of private APIs is, suppose you work at a company X, like X can be any company that you can think of, maybe your dream company. So you are sitting inside of your dream company and then you are asked to develop your own APIs, or there are a lot of internal APIs that the company uses. So those APIs are private APIs. Those APIs, they make sure that you don't make it public. Those APIs are used for internal communication that takes place between the teams. So suppose there is a team setup and now backend data needs to be sent to the front-end team. Now I am a backend developer. I created my API. I need to send this data to the front-end. So now what I will be doing, I will be sending this data to the front-end team, but this communication is not public. Everything is happening inside of the company. And how programmatically is this data sent? We'll be seeing in the following slides. So this was just an example of API based on accessibility. Now, based on your style of making the API, there are three APIs. One is SOAP APIs. So in the earlier days before REST API, so REST came somewhere around the 2000s. Before that, SOAP APIs were used, and recently we have GraphQL APIs as well. So the most recent development is the GraphQL API. REST is something that is widely used in the industry. Then you have SOAP for the earlier APIs. These APIs are based on the architectural style. So our focus would today be on REST APIs because these are widely used. SOAP APIs are used today. It is not that one is not the replacement for other. So don't think that REST has come, so we are not going to use SOAP, or GraphQL has come, so SOAP and REST have deprecated. There is nothing of this sort. Industry uses all the three APIs, and based on the use case, they use the best thing possible. But in today's session, we'll be covering mainly REST APIs. And I'll just give you a two-line brief on what is meant by SOAP API and what is meant by GraphQL API. So SOAP API, the difference between SOAP API and REST API was based on the data response. There are other differences also, but one significant difference is SOAP APIs give XML response. So the communication between systems when you use SOAP APIs is using XML data format. We'll be discussing ahead what is XML data format, but the communication when SOAP APIs are used is through XMLs. When we are using REST APIs, the communication takes place by exchanging the JSON data. What is JSON data? We'll be discussing in the following slides, so there is nothing to worry. And then you have GraphQL APIs. So GraphQL APIs is like a very efficient way of querying the data, of basically querying the data. So in REST API, what happens is, if I query something, if I have to get my personal data, so you can imagine that you are logging into a completely new platform, and now you want, now someone has to check whether this customer data already exists in our database or not. So when we are using REST, what happens is all of the customer data gets returned. So it will check for your first name, it will check for your last name, it will check for your email address, and every possible thing that you had filled up in the sign up form, everything is queried and everything gets returned. But in case of GraphQL, what happens is you can query a very specific thing. So instead of getting all the details, if we want to check only the first name of the logged in person, so we can just query the first name of the logged in person. It doesn't send any, it doesn't return any kind of extra data in the response. While in REST API, everything that is possible, everything that is present in the response will come back to you. So that is the difference between REST APIs and GraphQL APIs. But in case it is unclear, so you can just check more examples onto it, because I'll not be going into the GraphQL depth as the session is primarily of REST, and REST still is very widely used. This is one of the concepts that is being asked in interviews also, and no matter at what stage of career you are, REST is something that everyone asks. So this is important. We'll be moving ahead to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So what exactly is meant by REST APIs? So REST basically stands for Representational State Transfer. So basically, like, not going by the full form of REST, we'll just be discussing what is REST. So it is basically a set of rules that the developer follows when they create an API. So when you create a REST API all by yourself, we are not talking today about creation, we are talking about integration. But when someone creates a REST API, they have to follow certain set of rules for the REST APIs. So based on those rules, the APIs are created, and those kind of APIs are termed as REST APIs. So REST is an architectural pattern basically. And one of the rules is that if you associate, one of the rules is you should be able to get a piece of data when you link it to a specific URL. So when you link any kind of data with a specific URL, that data should get returned. It should not happen that I am entering a URL in my browser and I am expecting some data to return and there is no data being returned. So every time there has to be some data that needs to be returned when we enter the URL or when we query the endpoint. So these are certain rules for creating the REST API. I mean, this is one of the rules. There are more specific rules, but all of that is based on the creation. At the moment, our complete focus is on integration. So we are trying to integrate an API that is already created by someone else. And once, that is already created by someone else. So that is the difference you need to understand. Creating an API is different. Integrating an API is different. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Yeah. So what exactly is meant when we say integration? Creating is you are creating your own API. Integrating is someone else has created the API and I am creating it with my own system. I'm trying to link it up to my own program, or I'm trying to add it to my own program. I am not the original creator of the API here. So when in our Twitter example, Facebook example, we are not the one who have created those APIs. Twitter and Facebook APIs are basically created by their teams. However, we are just using the feature of the or the functionality of the API. So you need to understand that we are just using the feature. We are not developing something that Facebook and Twitter have already developed. We are just integrating the part of it. And this is a similar diagram or a more granular look. The client can be your program or any kind of program you are running inside of your web browser. Anything can be your client. It is basically sending the request to the server. Server is the place where your API is residing. And then whatever is the response returned by the API, that is again returned back to you. And that is what is visible to us. So in case of websites, you can see that whenever you query something, what is returned to you is a web page. You query facebook.com, it returns to you a web page. So that is basically a response that is being sent by the server. And usually by request, we mean that we are talking about the URL. So moving on, we'll be going more in depth now that we have discussed the architecture pattern. We'll be going into request. What exactly is meant by HTTP request? So the diagram that you can see here tells us that what all things a HTTP request comprises of. So an HTTP request is basically your URL. So here our URL is https api.github.com. And then your method is, there are different kinds of method in the, there are different kind of methods that can be used. One is get, put, post, delete. And then there are multiple headers that are used when you request something. And then we also send some data. So client sends some data to the server. These are basically the things. But before moving on to all of this, let us discuss another important concept, that is HTTP. So what is HTTP? So let us learn this through an example. So HTTP is basically a protocol. So what is exactly is meant by a protocol? Suppose you and your friend are talking over on a phone call, and then so there is a rule you follow, right? Whenever you say something, the other person stays silent, and whenever I say something, the other person stays silent. So whenever someone is speaking, the other person has to stay silent and listen. If two people start communicating at the same time, there is no communication that is going to take place. So you need to remember this. First, the client requests something to the server. Only after requesting something to the server responds back to the client. So HTTP is basically the kind of protocol through which the client and the server are communicating with each other. So you need to remember that. And when we use HTTPS, it is a more secured way of doing things. We'll not be going into in-depth of how HTTP works and how HTTPS works. But overall, the concept is this. The communication is taking place using the HTTP protocol. So like continuing with our examples. So we have our URL. There are different kinds of methods. There are list of headers, and then there is body. So now we'll be moving ahead. Can you move on to the next slide, please? Okay. So so now we are basically on request headers. We discussed that our request has a URL. We also talked about that there are a lot of headers that go along with the request. So this is a small snippet that tells you what are the different kinds of headers that go along with the request when the communication takes place. So you can see in the line number 1, it tells you that the method is a get method. So this method is different based on what you are using. If you are using a post method instead of get, the first line would be post. So first line basically is telling you what is the type of method that is being used. Next line tells the host. So host is basically developer.mozilla.org. So I have taken this snippet from the MDN website, developer website. So host is telling you that basically what is your client, from which website has the request being sent. So it was developer.mozilla.org. And then next is your user agent. So through user agent, we come to know that what is basically the type of my browser, what is the type of the machine that I'm using. So all those details you can see are very clearly mentioned in the user agent. And then fourth line, as you will see, is accept. So accept tells you that text HTML. It is telling that we accept text as HTML. So the client is accepting the text as HTML. And then when we go on to next, it tells you accept language, and it is written EN-US. So the whole website is in English. Had the language been different, this accept language would have been different. But my whole website is present in English, so it is just telling me EN. And then we have another thing as connection, line number 8. So connection tells us that both, like, we have an active internet connection and client and server are communicating with each other. So that is, the communication is active. And like, these are basically all the fields that we see in our request headers. So so you don't have to explicitly add request headers when you are programming. This is something that gets automatically to your request. You don't have to explicitly keep on adding the user agent and everything. We don't add it. These are already present. So now we'll be moving on to the next slide, please. Okay, so before I was telling that there are different kinds of methods. So REST is helping us basically communicate between the client and the server. And for the communication to take place, there are different kinds of methods. As you can see, there is a get method. So get method is, it returns a list of data. Example. So one example is, I go on to a Domino's pizza shop. I'm hoping most of us enjoy having pizzas. And now that we are home, I don't know how many of us are able to, go out and have it, or how many of us are preparing it on our own and having it. So just for the imagination purpose, let us assume that you are going inside of the pizza shop and the days are like the good old days. And you enter the pizza shop, you are asking the person who is taking the order to tell you that what is the menu. You are asking them for the menu, and they return you the menu card. They hand over the menu card to you. So now the menu card contains list of all the pizzas that are available with Domino's. So in a similar way, GET request works. Whatever you query using the GET request, it would return you all the fields. So if I am querying that what is there in the menu, it would return me all the list of things available in the menu. If I am querying that how many customers are present on this platform, or how many customers are present on GitHub, suppose, so it would return to me all the list of GitHub, all the list of GitHub users, but only provided that this information is made public. This is a private information, so we won't be able to see it. But with public APIs, these things can be tested. Like, you can send a GET request call. GET request is just for listing things. We are not creating anything. We are just listing things. Another example is post. Now, as I have seen the menu card, I am very curious to have one pizza. and I ask them to get a, double cheese burst pizza, and I order them that, can you please give me a double cheese burst pizza? So now that this is when I'm creating my order. I'm asking them that, can you please prepare the order for me? So this is when we are creating something. So you need to remember that post is when we are trying to create something. Post is related to creation. So the perfect example for this is like you are on a completely new platform. Like suppose you are trying to go on a completely new platform. You have never logged in on that platform before. So you see a login and sign up. As you are not a old customer of that platform, what you do is you sign up. And sign up is something that means that they are creating something. They are adding your information onto the database. They are adding a new customer in their database. So that is an example of post request call. You need to remember post with creation. Another example is put. Now what happened is, out of my excitement, I ordered for a double cheese burst pizza, but then I again looked at my menu card and I found something even more tempting and interesting. So I was like, no, let us change the order. So this is when I go back to that person again and I am asking him, can you please change the pizza? Like, can you please change either the pizza itself, or can you please change my crust, or can you please change the topping of this pizza? And that is when the put request helps us. Put is basically updating your information. There is already some information present and I am kind of updating that information. So one example of this is, I have registered myself with a different postal address, and 2 days, like a month later, I change my postal address and I want to update my information on some website where it is needed. So then you need to so your information will just get updated. So that is basically an example of post. That is an example of put request call. And this can be imagined at places, basically at most of the, like when you are ordering something from Amazon maybe, and one time you enter some other delivery address and another time you enter some other delivery address. So that is just, we are either updating the information or we want Amazon to have more than one information for us. So updating is basically a put request call. And then there is delete. I want that I should be removed. Like I suppose one day you are highly motivated and you decide to get away from all the social media platform, and you are like, no, I won't be deactivating my account. I want my account to get permanently delete. I want to delete my account permanently. So that is when you go on the platforms and you just enter delete and all your data gets deleted. So that is practically an example of delete. And I like, obviously at a pizza shop, I'm not going to go and delete my order or cancel my order. So the pizza shop example might not fit in here. So that's why I thought of having another example. So these are basically the most commonly used HTTP methods while the communication takes place between the client and the server. I hope things are clear up till now. And do you want me to take any of the questions right now, or we'll be doing it at the end?
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on you. Do you want to take some questions right now? I know that you've been talking for a while now. You want to take some questions?
Yeah, that would be fine, I guess. If there are any questions, I can take those up. And so far, how it has been going? Maybe like some response might help me improve the presentation further.
Yeah, I think like it's been going really great. I love the pizza, analogy, because I haven't had a pizza in a long time. So
Yeah, same here. I'm also craving for the pizza now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Elisa has a question. She asked, when people have reference to open source, does that have anything to do with an API?
No. So, I mean, answer can be a yes or a no, but mainly it is no. Open source is a completely different concept, and APIs is something that is completely different. So when I tell you that API of Twitter and API of Facebook, that doesn't mean the APIs are open source. It means that APIs are public. Twitter and Facebook is not showing you their source code. They are not showing us the code that, okay, see, this is how we have internally structured our code base, and that is how we are fetching the information and sending. So all of this is a very high level overview of what is happening inside. They'll never tell you what is happening inside of your code. So it is not open source. What is open source is you have the source code already available with you. So an example of open source can be a language like Python. So you have all the source code with you, not with you, it is present on GitHub, and you can check python.org for that, and all the source code is with you. So that is basically what is meant by open source. There is nothing that is hidden, things are very transparent, and there is community that is involved in building up the whole system or the platform. But Twitter, Facebook, GitHub, these are corporate platforms and these are established companies. They don't have open sourced these APIs. They have made the APIs public. So public APIs is different, open source is different.
Absolutely.
I hope that clears the question. I mean, you now have clear understanding.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. If not, like Eliza, feel free to drop in some more questions around that. And another question by Mariam is, will you be like talking about hands-on tools, example, useful Python packages like Fast AI Flask and maybe best practices? Will you be covering that too?
Uh, uh, so just like this reminds me of putting forth one more really important point that has nothing to do with the presentation, but this is a general thing that I have observed, and I think that, like, I'm not saying anything specific to you, so don't take it on yourself, but this is a general piece of kind of advice or something that I like, something that my mentor has told me, and that is something that we need to focus on the fundamentals first. So it is like everything in the market is shiny everywhere, everyone is using buzzwords, and when I say machine learning, someone else will tell me that no, machine learning is old, what are you saying, we are now doing deep learning, and someone else will come with computer vision, and in the end you might be overwhelmed with, and that is, there might be a lot of imposter syndrome, that we are not, I haven't dealt with all these buzzwords. So my point is, first try to get a hang over the concepts. These things are something, if your fundamentals are clear, you can integrate, you can pick up Flask, you can pick up Flask API, you can pick up any kind of framework, any kind of language. These standards, what we are discussing today, is something that is followed irrespective of the language. Whatever kind of language be there, you can just use the APIs. That is how generic this overall concept is. So all the shiny things are good, but like, first try to focus on fundamentals. And this piece of advice is basically for people, if there is anyone out here who is just graduating or straight out of college and has seen job descriptions and everything, so there are only keywords written. So what is going to help in the long run is the fundamentals, and these frameworks and everything keep coming and going. Today it is Flask, tomorrow it might be Django, today it is version 3, tomorrow someone might use release 3.2 or something. So fundamentals is something that is going to help. And now answering your question, so we won't be going into the depth of fast API or anything. We'll be understanding the fundamentals first. And also today I won't be covering creating of APIs. We are just discussing integration of APIs. So whenever I'll talk about creating APIs, or if I happen to conduct next session, then we'll be talking about the creation part. Today it is just integration, so it is just good old Python and all fundamental concepts. Once the fundamentals are clear, we'll gradually be building things.
Yeah, so we have one more question before we just start in. When do we need a developer account for APIs?
So you need a developer account for APIs when you decide on your own that, okay, today I'm going to develop an interesting project out of the API that Twitter has made available. That is when you will need a developer account. And one example of having the developer account is that suppose you want to just fetch all the tweets from your timeline. The use case is you want to fetch all the tweets. Suppose you created your account in 2010, suppose 10 years, like it has already been 10 years since you created the account. And now one day you suddenly decide that, I need to pull all my tweets of the timeline from the timeline. So that is when you can just ask Twitter for the developer account. If they give you a developer account access and provide you with the API keys, then you can use the developer account. Also for security purpose, it is to be remembered that all these APIs ask you for some like APIs keys and token, that is for the security purpose. If things are made publicly available, everyone knows that we humans are going to probably exploit everything that is available. So there are two sides of the coin, the good side and the bad side. And there are people who are more keen on targeting the bad sides and doing bad things out of what they have provided for a good cause. So that is why authentication is something that needs to be taken care of. And whenever you push your code on GitHub, suppose you integrate an API today and push your code onto GitHub, what is to be remembered is all the secret keys need to be kept secret only. These don't have to be made public. And don't think that no one is going to search for my account and we don't even know, and we cannot even imagine what all bad things can be done. So it is better to stay safe with that.
Got it. I think we can move on. I guess everyone has a time constraint now. We have almost past 50 minutes, so let's just move on if possible.
Yeah. Next, this we had discussed. Yeah, so now like we had discussed the structure of the request, there is structure for the response as well. So structure for the response is response returns the status code. Then there are headers. So like we discussed a list of headers for the request, there are list of headers for the response, and then there is body. So body is basically the data that is being sent in the response. So in our examples ahead, we will be seeing what is meant by body. Can you move on to the next slide? Yeah. So all of you have laptop access, you can either, if you want to try, you can try it. And Archana will be trying it on her browser. So when we enter this URL on the browser, so whenever we enter anything on the browser, it is the get request call that happens. Yeah. So now Archana, can you just put a slash behind the URL and write 200? Yeah. So now you can see a cute cat picture. So this tells us status code is 200 and the meaning is okay. Every status code has some meaning corresponding to it. And okay means that both client and server are communicating fine. and a successful request call has taken place. A client has sent the request and server has sent the response. Can you write 500 now? Yeah, 500 means internal server error. Now this example means I am asking the server to send me a response, and then server is not returning me any response. I am not getting what I had asked for. So this is when 500 comes, and this mostly comes when you as a developer has created any API and your API endpoint is having some error. If there is any error, whoever is querying your API would get a 500 response, should get a 500 response. So that is something that you need to take care of when you are building things. Next is 404. Can you write? 404 comes when there is no URL of this sort exists. So it returns 404. You are asking for something that doesn't exist at all. So that is when you get a 404. So these are most commonly encountered status codes that you will see. And another example is of like Quora. We'll not be showing it to you here. It is when lot of times you might get a gateway timeout error. So that usually raises 502 or 504 error. So now we'll be quickly going ahead. Next slide, please. Can you go back to the presentation? Yeah, earlier that we had already discussed for the request, these are for the response. We have status codes, access control, connections, and then there are date and lot of other fields as well. Next, please. Now there are different kinds of responses. One response is the HTML response. You can just check the HTML response by going on any website. Yeah. When you go on the website, you click on developer tools. You will see on the left hand side, there is a type of response that comes. So this is basically an HTML file. It has JavaScript also embedded inside of it, but you can see that this is an HTML page. So this is the example of an HTML response. Next example is a JSON response. Yeah, so when you open this is not github.com. Remember, this is api.github.com. And the output that you see here is something like that of a Python dictionary. So you have key and you have a value corresponding to it. So all these are basically the key value pairs, and you have one key and then you have a URL. So this is the JSON response. Can you go back to the presentation, please? Next is XML response. So we'll be showing it. Yeah. So here is a small snippet of the XML response. This is basically a short XML response. And this you will have to find more on the web whenever you have time to check out how more detailed or more data intensive XML response looks like. Yeah, next slide, please. So now through code, how do we integrate the APIs? So while integrating APIs, there are two libraries that we need. One is request and the another one is JSON. Request library is used for communicating with our data source. It is used to make HTTP calls to another data source. That is where you use requests. And you can visit the documentation of this. And then next is JSON. So the JSON is a standard library in Python. You don't have to install it. For requests, you will have to install it using pip install requests. And then next I am doing is I am writing request.get and then I have a URL api.github.com. So now this returns me a response. So whatever response you saw in the browser will come in this response variable. And now this response variable is basically an object. What needs to be remembered is this response is an object. Now this response has various fields inside of it, like it has status code, it has text. So what I am doing it is I am in line 5, I am on line 5, response.text means I am trying to see the text response. So dot text returns a string field. It returns a string response basically. So now I am converting this string response to a JSON response. So dot loads converts a stringless response to a JSON response. And we are converting it to a JSON response so that we are able to parse the response. So basically for parsing purpose, we have to load the response. So now API response is parsable, and then in line 7, all I am doing is just checking the status code. So while you are coding your programs, you according to your according to the API you are using, you will have to change the URL, you will have to change the methods. And most commonly used library is the request library that you use. And next slide, please. Requests can be installed by doing pip install requests. So way forward from here is, if you have understood all the concepts that we talked about today, you can try thinking of a good use case to use an API in your project. And there are a lot of APIs available as that of Telegram, Slack, Twitter, Facebook, and you can integrate in your programs. Some of the use cases I can give you example of are, you can, if you are a data science person out here, you can first try collecting the data. So instead of picking a Kaggle data set, you can just collect the data on your own. Go access this Twitter API, get the API keys, query it using requests module, pull all of the data, and then after pulling the data, do whatever you are trying to do. So you have your own data set with you. So you can put this data inside of a Excel sheet, or you can add this to a database as per your wish, but you can get all your Twitter data. And if you are doing some kind of machine learning analysis on it, so based on that data, you can just do sentiment analysis. This is another use case. If you are a visualization person, data visualization is your thing. On the pulled out data, you can just do data visualization. Some example can be that how many times in a day are you tweeting, how many things are you liking, what kind of data are you liking. Another example can be, you can use these platforms to build various kinds of bots. Telegram is often used to build the bots. And these are some of the examples that I can think of. You can think of all the good use cases. And one example that I had recently built was, can you change the slide, please? Yeah, this is a WhatsApp bot. So I had recently built up a WhatsApp bot. It returns me whatever, it kind of returns me the definition, meaning, definition of the word, synonym, antonyms, and examples. So it will return me whatever I query it for. So there can be more amazing use cases. And this is just a GIF explaining you what are the things being returned. Everything behind of this is basically done using an API. So thank you everyone. This was all I had for the session today. I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you. Looking forward to your feedback, and thank you for joining in.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this presentation, Mridu. And I think we have a couple of questions from the audience for sure. So let me just take up a few questions and ask you that. And then we can just wrap up the presentation. How did you start working as a backend Python dev? That's an
No.
interesting question.
Yeah, that is actually an interesting question. So, I was kind of fortunate in this sense. I had Python as one of my subjects when I was in college. So, I was very fortunate to have a very, very good professor. So, I mean, post that, it is everything that I learned from him, and everything that I keep on forwarding is what I learned. And then the first internship that I got was from a site named as Internshala. And I just normally applied on a job platform because I didn't have any connections in the industry, no networking, nothing. So after a lot of rejections, one of the companies selected me, and that was a Python company. So that was how things began. And post that as well, I mean, most of the times I have to rely on the job boards.
That's so true, like about, facing rejections and also turning out to be a Python dev. Another thing that I had here is that do I need a credential for Twitter API?
uh, like I had used Twitter API long back. So Twitter asks you to create an account. Then it will ask you for the reason that you want to create a developer account. So provided that your reason is a valid reason and they think that it is a good use case, then they will provide you access and give you the authentication tokens and keys. If they think that this is not something that is to be built, so they might not even give you the API keys. So everything that depends onto Twitter.
Got it. Yeah,
So
it
you
depends.
will be asked to fill up a form basically,
Yeah.
and then they'll send you the keys. Mostly they give. I mean, I had used for data collection a couple of times. They give the keys.
Uh-huh. So another question here is, what does the Q in the accept language header on this slide mean? I think like where you were explaining about queues and maybe the
Uh,
error slide, I think.
that is something, I mean, that I too will have to check, because these things are something that you don't have to explicitly provide when you code. So I might also have overlooked it. So that is something I think that would be better, that instead of me answering, you can just search for it.
Okay. Yeah. And for those who are actually putting their questions out in the chat, if you could put it on in the Q&A option, that's also available just right on your screen. It'll help us to write, answer all your questions online and actually answer it live. So the next question we have is, are we planning to code an implementation of consuming some API today? I think we did sort of, right? Explain what you got.
Yeah, so these, I mean, if there is a hands-on session, so it takes, you know, a lot of time is needed to do those coding things. So only a snippet was something that we could show you. But if there is something hands-on in future or something, not for the today's session, that was the only snippet that we had for today.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We can, have you on again and maybe go into this into a little depth. As you said, there's so much you can cover into fundamentals, and fundamentals are so important, like the building blocks of understanding what has to come ahead. So, I mean, for people who are interested to build something, I think much more like people who are experienced and want to build something much more, I think, concrete or something. Just stay tuned for our next session, maybe with Mridu, if she wants to come back.
Definitely.
Then Maria asked, what is so special about paid APIs? Do they show us a bit of their functionality before we can buy them? Example, Google Maps.
They don't show us the functionality. So no one is going to show what they are doing at code level. So all these things are high level things, and they just tell you that, okay, these are the features that we have exposed, and you can just directly consume these features. So things are happening at a high level. They won't be showing at granular level what their developer has coded.
Got
So,
it.
and this goes on for paid and unpaid APIs both. Unless and until something is open source, they won't be showing you the code.
Got it. Absolutely. And I think another question that we had from Kevin was, hello, can you explain if it's all right the advantage and disadvantage in terms of performance in using an API backend for a web application versus using a monolith backend?
Um, no, I mean that requires lot more experience to give a performance related answer onto this one. So I mean maybe I would not be able to answer, and we'll have to skip it.
Yeah, that's completely fine. I think, Kevin, you can maybe mail it to us, and maybe, if she has
Yeah,
the time, or if I have the time, we'll look into it and send you over the answer.
yeah, because this answer needs a concrete explanation. So
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
is
Yeah.
yeah, that is
So like a performance like comparison. So I definitely think we need to make
yeah,
sure
architect.
we give you the right
Yeah,
answer.
right answer.
So yeah, can you talk some questions about you would ask a candidate on this topic during a job interview?
I haven't myself taken any interview. I am myself a early career professional, 2-3 years of experience. But some of the things that people had asked me in the interview was, what is the difference between the post request call and put request call? And then they had asked me that, what do you mean by REST API? What do you mean by APIs in general? And have you integrated the API, or have you created any kind of APIs on your own? And like in APIs also, they often ask that, have you worked with any kind of consumer facing APIs? So what consumer facing API means is that like I as a backend developer, I'm sending something to the front end person, and then that front end person is integrating that data in somewhere in the front end. So those are the consumer facing APIs when I'm sending them something to the front end developer. So all these questions are something that the interview, like that I was being asked in the interviews.
Yeah, definitely. I think like working with APIs is always a plus. And I think it's something that we eventually do, right? I mean, automating anything, or even if you want to like build a bot, you have to eventually come down to an API
Right.
and figure out how it works. So I
One of
think,
the major benefit of APIs is that it saves lot of time. You don't have to build things from scratch. And while you are working in the industry, I think it is not advisable as well to build things from scratch, as there is a deadline attached to everything.
absolutely.
So that is
Yeah.
not always a good idea to reinvent the wheel. That is what they say.
Yeah, that's so true. Everyone is on a clock. I just quickly go through another few questions. I'm sorry if some of your questions get left out because we have another 12 questions which are open, and I
Oh.
want to be really, really wary of the time. So, yeah, we have a very nice question here. This is Meg, and she's asking, what are some of the resources you use to learn the fundamentals? Do you learn more on the job?
Uh, no, I mean REST APIs was something that I neither learned in college and neither on job. It mostly came out of exploration of things, and mostly out of the curiosity to build something and see what these APIs are. One time that I used the API for the first time was in college when I was asked to do a project, and that time I had to use the Twitter API. So that was my first interaction with the API. But in that knowledge of the API, I learned later only. So you just have to experiment with the APIs. That's it. Build
Yeah.
interesting projects and it will be fun.
We have, I guess I'll just pick out a question now because there's so many questions, and I'm really sorry if I haven't picked up your question, but I will leave an email ID so you can leave us the questions just in case we skip some out, and you can just mail us the question and we'll be back with you with the answers. We just want to be wary of the time that everyone has here. So I guess we have a couple of questions concerning the WhatsApp bot that you showed, and I'm just going to quickly run through all the questions so that you answer it at a go. Firstly, is the GitHub available for the code? Secondly, is it a similar case for WhatsApp? But I don't know where this question is coming from, but let us just move on to another question. Is the WhatsApp API also available for developers? Um,
Uh,
yeah, I think
yeah.
that's.
Uh, what was I have forgotten the question itself. So,
They asked, is there a GitHub code available for this
yeah, yeah.
bot
So
case?
you can check Mridu Bhatnagar on GitHub, and then there is a repo named as VocabBot. So the name of the, I think if you can type in the chat or somewhere, the name of the bot is VocabBot. This is the repository name that you can check. It is VOCABBOT, VocabBot. It has all the source code. Also, another place you can find the complete tutorial is the Twilio blog. So I don't know how many of you know, but the twilio.com, when you go and you go on their blog section, there is a complete tutorial of the WhatsApp bot I have written. So I think Soham has shared it. So thank you, Soham. Yeah, this is the repo. And on Twilio, when you go, Twilio, I have written a complete blog on that. So step by step, you can follow which APIs I am using, how I am using. Twilio has a free access. So you can just create a free account over there and then use the API. WhatsApp doesn't provide a developer API. It provides a business API. So you would be able to use the API only if you are a business owner, and that is a paid API. So that is something I'm not using. I'm using the Twilio API and the Twilio sandbox. So you can just follow through the blog, as explaining the bot here is beyond the time limit. So that won't be possible. Yeah, exactly. This is the blog link that is being shared with you all.
Yeah, so I think let's just try and wrap it up, because I know this is getting really late. And yeah, so your feedback is really, really valuable to us. Thank you so much for, joining into the session. So feel free to leave us your feedback in this form, in this QR code link, and through this you can get a form. And also all your feedback will be anonymous. And another thing, that you will be able to get link to the slides that Mridu presented today through the feedback form. And furthermore, you can stay connected to us. So the way that you can stay connected to us through our upcoming events is check out our Women Who Code Python page. And I hope we have you for our upcoming events. We have how to build bots on Twitter. So maybe she will go through Tweepy API. So definitely, a lot of learning that we went through today will also be one of the application, is something that we'll go through on Saturday, 8th August. And so do stay tuned. And thank you so much for joining in today. I hope all of you learned something, and I hope all of you have a great day or a good night. Thank you for joining us from all across the world.